welcome to Asian Allies Allstars. My name is Jolene. Jolene, like this song, Dolly Parton's song, and Jang, Joy, Jump for Joy. And if you'll notice in my, with my name, I have it phonetically spelled out, Jolene Jang. And if we can start to normalize the idea to have a um, phonetic way of pronouncing it, I think that will help people who have names that we're not used to. And I saw that Christine Shu is doing that practice already. So that is very exciting. First of all, with Asian Allies, the reason that this group exists is because with less than 7% Asian Americans, 23 million here in the States, it's really hard to make a difference in a gratifying type of way because we're such a small group, but growing quickly. And personally, I began this because my network was not there for me and pretty much is still not there for me. So I needed to find other people who were in the majority, who are non-Asians, who have a heavier voice, have more influence, or can relate to the majority of the people. And so that is why I began this group. And we have people like Pat who have been here on day one. And so that is why we exist, because we need to make it better and safer for us to exist. And the reason that we have Asian Allstars is to recognize our Allstars. What are they doing? Why do they do it? Because they do it for some reason. And what is that? So we can inspire others to do more. I know that nobody here wants to brag or anything, but I do want a few of the Allstars that are here to be a little bit more detailed, because it is those small things that make a huge impact on this side. Do share what is that you do? How do you make time for it? And why do you do it? And I'm hoping that the people both here on the call, but also on the recording can say, oh, well, shoot, I have 30 seconds here, or I have 2 minutes here, or I have that kind of skill, or I have this other resource. I don't have any time, but I can connect people. I can get a podcast going. I can refer. Tonight, we're going to have a few of the Asian Allstars share. And then we're going to go a little bit through Japanese American history, a couple of resources that you may not have seen. And then I'm going to draw your attention to this Asian American voter survey that I listened to yesterday, because I think it's pretty telling. It's not a huge study, but I think it's still representative. Next week for our meeting, I thought we would talk about sex trafficking, particularly of Asian Americans. And Kevin Henry, I think you could also pipe in onto that next week. I'll talk to you offline, because he is in a Rotary group that is trying to fight that and reduce that. And also the ads for selling Asian women, that's happening right now. For next week, I would like to start inserting a book review of Asian American centered of characters and also authors. And we did a program last week of Asians to Follow. And I'd like to have that be a reoccurring segment as well. Can you share with us just a little bit about your background and what you have done and what you are doing and why you do it?
My name is Olga Levin, and that's, the last name. The Levin is, I like to say it's pronounced like E11, but without the E, or as an unleavened bread. I am originally from Northeastern Europe. I was born in a small country called Latvia, in particular in Riga, Latvia. My parents are from Russia. No, I've never been to Russia in my life, so I don't know what it's like to be there. But my first language happens to be Russian. Anyway, but I grew up here in Seattle, Washington. What I've done to make a difference in Asian American lives, and these are the things that I really, that I hope that I do make an impact in. As far as with the group, doing like little things like just posting a reply to a comment, or if I come across like something really cool, where there's not just only Asian Americans, or but Asians throughout the world, and post an article or a video or something like that. I'm not always able to be as active as I would like to be. And another thing, of course, I'm doing is contributing what I can with the book program.
Being that you are at a bookstore, can you talk a little bit more about what you're doing in terms of the book program?
I have gone through sections where I'd scanned a bunch of books that are not only written by Asian authors or Asian American authors, but the stories include, Asian characters and stuff. I try to give light to the uh, the books that have been challenged or banned, out of libraries and school libraries, and by just putting them up on our little end cap where we have banned books. And the last time I looked at it, I was like, this is way too white, and it's stuff that like everybody already knows about. That's books that have been banned, like 1984 by George Orwell, as an example, or Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin. And what I did was I went over and grabbed Julie Otsuka's book When the Emperor Was Divine, and I just put it on there, and it did sell. It sold. I had to order, 2 copies into the store, and guess what? I'm gonna put 1 copy on that end cap again. So I have some other ideas that I want to try with that end cap while we still have it up, and like maybe making what we call shelf tossers, which is we grab like a little like a piece of paper, and to write about like why the book was banned, or something like that. It's just kind of an idea at the moment, but
That book that you mentioned, Otsuka, there was an article talking about that we posted recently about in Wisconsin, I think, where you're from, Pat. The school district was like, no, we can't have that. Where's the other side? It's too sad. We just talked about this article, and then boom, Olga put it right in there. It's like using the resources we have and then doing something about it. Really helpful.
the bottom line is doing my part to helping to educate people.
Olga is attending all the things that I'm putting on, and I never know if anybody's going to show up. Attendance is actually a big deal. I mean, it's a big commitment. She mentioned making comments. So the more people can share their comments, also the feed can be seen, and also hearing perspectives and being, with a background not being born here, that also is a really rich background for us to understand. I think a lot of people feel like, oh, I don't do much, oh my gosh, it's like, no, these are really big deals, at least from my end, because it's helping us. I feel like I'm seen. I feel like, oh, I'm worth somebody investing in time and effort. So thank you for that, Olga. Pat.
McGuire. Before I retired, this is a long title, a developmental behavioral pediatrician, which means that I explained to everybody why kids did things the way they did. And I don't know if any of you are parents. I know Kevin is. But basically, you spend your time going, why are you doing this? And the kids are going, I don't know. And they don't know, but I help people understand why. But I'm not retired. And so I decided to take up copywriting, just to work on a website that I had. And so now my copywriting skills are coming in handy for Jolene, because she wanted some transcription of her YouTube videos. And I'm working on the 3rd one, Jolene, but I'm only halfway through it. So, but like Olga, if I see things on the internet, in the news or whatever that happens to mention anything dealing with Asian, be it positive or negative, I'll put it on Facebook and do a tag to Jolene. So in case she hasn't seen it, she can share it with others. Tried to get involved here in the Chippewa Valley, but there didn't seem to be that much interest. They said, oh, we got everything handled. I do it because I have a long history of being frustrated with the people that are labeled without cause. And I start with children. They're bad children, they're spoiled children, they're rotten children. No, they're children that have stresses and needs and all that. And then I just was able to see that, it goes beyond just, that you also have, the racial, the economic, all of the different groups that get looked down on by other groups. It drives me crazy. So I said, I have to be part of the voice that says, you know, we're we're no different than each other. We shouldn't be saying, you don't have a right to be this, or you should do that, or I love the ones where they say, go back to your own country, but you're like fourth generation American, like you said you are. Well, your country is the U.S. That's like my mixture is mostly Irish, but I got a little Scotch and a little Norwegian, and even a little bit of Northern Italy. I got like 1% Northern Italian.
Pat and I met 15, 20 years ago, the National Speakers Association, and she has been day one on Asian Allies and has been to at least over 40, maybe more, Pat, at least 40 meetings. And she's always, did you see, she was always researching like on the fly to like, oh, and hey, Jolene over here, they're doing this thing. Why don't you contact them? So a massive researcher and also posting. It's been very difficult with my network. Nobody wants to touch anything about Stop Asian Hate or anything. Oh, that's political. Pat is out there advocating for a number of different causes. And that's just so powerful and validating. Pat was one of the few people who validated me in the beginning. And that feels really good. So thank you for all of that.
You're welcome.
Leslie. Hello.
Hey, hello, everyone. My name is Leslie Liu. I am a second generation Korean and Chinese American, born and raised in San Francisco. And I'm a mother of 2 children under 5. I'm a wife. I work full time as an executive assistant, and I am a trauma-informed self-defense coach. And I am the founder of Reclaiming Your Courage. I am an author. I will be one of the featured authors in the upcoming Asian Women Trailblazers Who Boss Up book. And I am also a keynote speaker. I profoundly care about helping women, professional women and mothers speak up and stand in their power through a self-defense mindset. What I do is entirely different than self-defense in a traditional sense of like kicking pads and holding pepper spray. I've been a lifelong martial artist. I've worked with domestic violence survivors and just women who want to learn self-defense in general. But right at the emergence of Stop Asian Hate crime specifically, my work became a more trauma-informed kind of approach. And I started to lead workshops around how our identity intersected with the way that potential attackers perceived us on the street. And the reason why I started facilitating these workshops and holding space for people in a different way when it came to self-defense was there was always people in the class that would get yelled at. I don't know if anyone's had been in a self-defense class, but sometimes there's usually a man yelling at you or someone telling you to do a technique. And so I started pulling aside the women who they were mentally constipated or something was holding them back. And I spent years really coming from this lens around identity and what's really holding us back. And a lot of that time, it really did come around our cultural identity. And so I'm very fascinated with this work. So I teach people through a structure of a mindset around self-defense, how to actually speak up and how to use practical self-defense. I do this work because Stop Asian Hate occurred, and specifically the Atlanta spa shootings. And microaggressions and a lot of things started occurring in my workplace. I started speaking up. I started having a lot of interactions. I was being gaslit by my own management. I was being gaslit by my own community here in San Francisco, the Asian community. So even though I am Asian, doesn't necessarily mean that I get this full pass here, because it was like, oh wait, no, you're making too many waves. Like you say fuck, like you're too intense. And 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 a lot of my work is supporting women who have been attacked. A lot of Asian women are my clients, ones that have been attacked on the streets, but I also work with women specifically who have trouble speaking up and asserting their boundaries. So that's what keeps me up at night, just because, right around Asian hate crimes, I am constantly the one kind of bringing it to the table, especially when there was a lot of the narrative around like Black and Asian crimes and kind of pointing at the Black community as the perpetrators. And I spent a lot of time dismantling that and having conversations and leading workshops and just really knowing that our community is worth fighting for. And I'll just kind of leave this in saying that the reason why I do this is that I don't think any women should feel like prey, but I think specifically Asian women struggle with intergenerational trauma and other aspects of their identity that prevent us from feeling like we are worth fighting for. So I'm always going to be this supporter of self-advocacy. And that's why I really love this group and just kind of everything that I learned here and supporting one another.
I also wanted to share with the group that because you've worked at Instagram and Facebook and some big companies, understanding the landscape, the digital landscape. So helping me with my Instagram and just helping me with messaging. And Leslie also interviewed me on Instagram on her channel, Reclaiming Your Courage, and also gave me a testimonial for my website. And validating and commenting. The validating and commenting, that is something where it doesn't have to take a lot of time, but is a really big supportive thing. So, and I know that I can call Leslie, well, just, hey, I'm super frustrated. Will you listen to this? And so it's that kind of thing. So thank you, Leslie. Renee.
Hi, Jolene. Hi, everyone. First of all, I would just like to say I really enjoyed hearing from other people and what they've been up to. It's really great to see how many people are super dedicated. So thanks, everyone. And I will say I would not call myself an all-star, but I do what I can every day to stop Asian hate and just to create a world where racism cannot exist. These things are really important to me because I feel like when we see people based on a category, then we automatically do not have an opportunity to get to know someone who we might learn a lot from or become really good friends with. So I found actually through the anti-racism work that I've done thus far, I've really developed some really cool connections with people that society has really tried to make not happen. So on top of that, also my family, I have family that is from the Philippines and they live in Queens of New York. So my sister-in-law's mother started fearing going out by herself, and it's just so horrible. So that's one of the things that drew me into Asian Allies. But also Kevco America introduced me to Jolene. So I'm really grateful for that. I currently live in Tucson, Arizona. I am originally from Colorado. I practice Chinese medicine. So I do acupuncture, martial arts actually for health benefits, as well as self-defense, of course, herbs, and teach Tuina body work. Being heavily invested in Chinese culture is really obviously important to me, and trying to do my best to understand it and transmit it. I have teachers that live in China that, we visit when we're not in a pandemic. This, my association with my teachers has gone on for more than 10 years. The things that I've been up to since being in this group are trying to get a DEI continuing education course going for massage therapists, in which Jolene and Kevin actually are certified instructors now to teach this awesome class. So we're going to try to host our first one this fall. There's just so much knowledge that is lost that people need to know about, like how to not make your client on the table feel uncomfortable, because I think it's something that white people do a lot of times without knowing, is saying something or doing something that, you know, they're unintentionally, they have unconscious bias. Unless we actively try to learn about it by listening to people like Jolene and Kevin, then we may just not know.
Not only did Renee is trying to do this, she paid for it and did the legwork. There's a few more things, Renee, you've done. I mean, you're being active in the local Chinese group.
Earlier this year, we led a Qigong class, and it was for donation. And we decided that our donation should go to the Tucson OCA, which is an organization that promotes social justice specifically for the AAPI community. Because of our donation, we actually made a connection with a wonderful Chinese activist. So her name's Leslie Mo Kaiser, and she's always sending emails about things that she's up to, campaigns we can support to promote justice for AAPI. Again, just like getting to know people in the community and like going to the Chinese Cultural Center and trying to get to know people there.
It's like, I want everybody to know like how much everybody is doing. It really is such a big deal. Through Kevin, Renee introduced me to White People Doing Something, which is an incredible group, 44,000 people. And they have this beautiful strategic plan to educate us on its Disability Pride Month. And so sharing, what does that mean? What in the world? And so, and got me involved with that too. And so it's like making introductions, you know, be thinking of all the different ways that we can use our skills and our connections to help each other. Oh, hello, V, who just popped on. V is also an Asian Allstar who has probably been to at least 40 meetings as well, and to many presentations, and is also local in the neighborhood and is very active in anti-racist groups, and has had training, how to listen and how to address people. For example, I'm not very well versed when somebody attacks me. V has modeled like how to ask questions. It's not accusatory. And so I've been able to learn a lot from how V is able to kind of invite them in and tell me more about that.
So I am in Shoreline, Washington, which is just north of Seattle. Something I shared earlier with Jolene, just kind of about my family background and how I got into doing activist work, is I'm the youngest of 9 children, and my dad was Catholic and my mom is Jewish. And so kind of from both of those traditions, learned the importance of just being involved in community and doing what I can to make the world a better place. At least that was the emphasis of my family. So I'm grateful for that. And my mom really modeled volunteering and being active in her community. She volunteered right up to the end of her life. She died when she was 89, but up until that point, she was transcribing Braille for blind people and like helping organize community meals and things like that. So I think I come by it honestly. I found out about Asian Allies when Jolene came to a meeting of another group I'm in, which is United Shoreline Organized Against Racism. And up until then, like I'd heard, yeah, there's some problems with anti-Asian hate, and yeah, Trump has been horrible for that and it's gotten worse, but it was just kind of on my periphery and I didn't realize the extent of the problem or how pervasive it was. But when Jolene came to the meeting and shared some information, I was like, oh, okay, this is actually a really big problem. And yeah, of course I want to help. And so that was about a year ago. And I've been coming to Asian Ally meetings ever since. I am a writer. And so that is the way that's very easy for me to help. Jolene often shares drafts of things that she wants to publish, marketing or social media posts or whatever. And I work with her to kind of polish them up and get them, ready to publish. And so that's, like I said, it's like really fun for me and really easy for me. So it's an easy way for me to use my skills, and it seems to be very helpful to Jolene. And so that's one of the ways I contribute. And I've also had a few brainstorming sessions with Jolene. Just she has some ideas, but she can't quite organize it, or she just wants to bounce the ideas off someone. And so I'm always happy to just hop on the phone and just chat with her about that. There's social media thread going on that's going a little haywire. I've had a bit of training in how to kind of redirect it and to just ask questions to get people feeling less defensive and just like having genuine curiosity about where people are coming from. I'm like, wow, why do you think that? And like, tell me more. And so that I try to do that to some extent. Those are the things that I can think of.
Thank you so much. To give a little bit more specifics, for example, when the Cambodian monk and nun were attacked in Tacoma, trying to get news for them so they can be on the map, so we can see what's happening and say, hey, that's not right. V and Lenore, who's not here, were able to write letters and like, hey, that's not great. And researching, and who do we contact? And also, she's done a testimonial, and so has Kevin Henry for the website, so people can understand, because they've seen a number of my presentations all the time. So the idea that V came up with was a watch buddy. We're trying to do some watch parties so we can talk. We can watch this little documentary about Vincent Chin and then talk about it. And it's going to be easier if we can discuss it with somebody. It's more motivating, more fun. V is, has attended a lot of meetings, and it's contributing too, but it's also just being there for me, because I look forward to Asian Allies always, because it is so rejuvenating. I get fuel from this, and it is so positive, and I get to learn from you all. I hope you can start to think about what your skill sets are, what makes sense, and different ideas. What I'd like to do is for each meeting is to have one all-star talk.
Well, I know that white people doing something will have these, I guess they're like daily actions. And because I think it's one thing to post something on Facebook, which is great, but when you actually see somebody verbalizing something, I think it has even more impact. So any opportunity to, even if it's for a minute or two, just to say something, maybe take one thing, maybe one action that you've done that, you broke the norm and did something that you never have done before. Maybe you went to a new neighborhood and had a meal at a restaurant you've never been in that was an Asian restaurant, and you actually talked to the owners and got to know people, and maybe you're going to make a commitment to go to one restaurant you've never been to per month or something. Because I think it's got to be normalized, and it's got to be, I think allyism of any form has to be kind of woven into your lifestyle, as opposed to just this kind of one-off thing that, you have a special day and then you forget about it. I got to do my yoga every morning. It's like, it's part of their lifestyle. It's not, I'm going to do yoga once a month. It's just, it's not as effective, right? So it's the same thing with the allyism, I believe, as well.
What I'm also hearing from that, Kevin, is I try and have action items, but I think one of them is maybe like something different. Like, what's one thing you did? Oh, I added 3 people to my feed. So I think we can start for the next meetings. I'm trying to put a different format together where we talk about, each person opts in and shares one thing that they did. Great idea. Thank you for that. Stacy, what you may not know is we've been working on a name pronunciation guide. And a lot of the times we use your last name as an example, because a lot of people do not know how to say your last name. Can you unmute yourself and say your name for us?
Yeah, it's Stacy Nguyen. Like, I'm winning something.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. But I've also heard like other people say it like Nguyen, where they pronounce the NG at the beginning more. I didn't notice like early on in my life until like later on, like when I started learning Vietnamese more often, like there's just kind of slightly different pronunciations for like the same word, depending on if you're North, South, or Central Vietnamese. Nguyen's the more common way for like, because it's more South Vietnamese. That makes sense.
Can you share with us, growing up, what are the different ways people have said your name, and how did you handle that?
I remember like in elementary school, an office administrator would literally write my name the wrong way with a W instead of the NG. I've also heard like NGUI, a lot, or like they would mix up the IU or YU a lot. And like I always just like try to correct them, be like it's Nguyen, like try to pronounce the Y more so they understand.
They spelled it wrong. How did they pronounce it?
Like Nguyen or Nguyen or I don't know. There's just like a lot of different ways, I guess. But like I guess Nguyen or like Nguyen is probably the more common ways I heard.
Hawaiian? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh, I've never heard that one.
Or
That's a
like,
new one.
yeah. They like put a lot of emphasis on the NG, which I understand, but like I don't know, when I say in Vietnamese, like it's so soft to like my ears that I don't like really hear it.
Did you correct people or did you have them, hey, they're never going to get it, or different? How did you handle that? Or how do you?
I always just try to correct them, be like, hey, it's like when like you're winning something. So like they understand, you're like, oh, that makes more sense.
Thank you for sharing that. So today I had a conversation with, she used to teach and she is in Minnesota. And she said she had 4 students, not related. And, 1 year, another time. And she thought it was Nguyen. And I've never heard of that. With this name pronunciation guide, it's these 3 to 5 minute videos that share, here are the common surnames, which is Nguyen, how to pronounce them, but also give you a little bit more context about the culture. I'm really pleased that you shared. I had no idea there were 10 ways to say that last name. And we also had Christine Shu, and she had spelled it phonetically like a shoe. So it's HSU. So we're lucky to have these examples. So I would like to share with you Japanese American history. So we're on jolenejang.com, and we're going to go under Learn, Asian American Trivia. And we're going to scroll to the power of words. The Japanese, in history, it's referred to as Japanese internment. But this is from the American style book, which is a big deal. This came out May 2022 to use incarceration, not internment. And I wanted to open this up and share with you here, understanding the preferred terminology about Japanese Americans in World War II. And so we're going to go to page 16, and I just want to share a few words here. So when we do talk about this, we can honor Japanese by using it correctly. So, and for example, evacuation. Oh, it's time to evacuate because there's a flood. That is for the safety of the person who's evacuating. So this was not Japanese Americans evacuating them. That's not what was happening. It was exclusion. It was forced removal. And so that's the reason. And is it relocation? No, they were incarcerated. And it's not camps. These are relocation center, concentration camp. As we start talking about these, when there's a reason to, let's try and use these terms so we can help educate folks on that. These are all free resources here under here. And then to add to your feed, I don't know if you do podcasts, but for example, let me share with you Kampu podcast. So the Densho Project, these are the big folks who have massive interviews with Japanese Americans during the time of the incarceration. There are 8 episodes, and these are with people who were there. And so one talks about food and bathrooms. And for example, so latrines, this episode talks about no privacy. There's no privacy. So these sisters would go at 3:00 in the morning so they could go to the bathroom by themselves. I used to have nightmares bathrooming. Like I was a kid and there was this big, huge auditorium of bathrooms. There were dirty bathrooms and it was in public. I don't know how that got in my mind. The ideas of modesty, I'm rather modest. For me, a Japanese American listening to these, I am seeing, oh, that's where that comes from. Here, it just shares it out. I think you might find it interesting too. I want to take you to this other podcast done by the Smithsonian. So, Executive 9066, that is the incarceration order. And so this gives you a lot of context. It's more produced, and so you can get a better feel. The other one was very personal. This one gives you kind of bigger picture. What I like to do each week is share like one page, a couple of books for teens and kids. They called us enemies. So this is George Takei, the Star Trek guy, Japanese American. And on Goodreads, I think that there's 4,905 reviews. Even if you didn't read it, I was going through a number of these, you really can get a gist of how people, their different perspectives, how they see it, what was interesting. And I think this is it's a good value too, even if you didn't even read the book. So I wanted to draw your attention to that. And it's a graphic novel. And I learned about this the other day, Looking Like the Enemy. This is, I think it's for more younger folks, but there's so many reviews, you can get a good sense of it. Just want to check in with everybody. Where are you at?
I love your idea of highlighting one page each meeting.
Okay, good.
Like, oh, I haven't seen that. Oh, yeah, that's cool. And yeah, so that makes it. I mean, you just have so much good information on your website. It's nice to just say, okay, we're just going to focus on this one thing. It's like, oh, I can do that. I can learn about that. So thank you.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
I was going to say that, knowing about those two podcasts, I could see kind of dripping them into my news feed periodically to say, did you know this about what happened during World War II with the Japanese? And that it was an incarceration, not a
evacuation. Yeah.
No, they called the centers internment camps, but they're actually concentration camps.
Right. Yeah. And
or incarceration camps. Yeah.
It's reading that piece that I just shared was really helpful, understanding why we use those terms. So I thought that was pretty cool. And it's pretty quick. I'm not so much of a reader. I'm a watcher or listener. So it spells it out here why we do that and what the difference is. And no, it's not a Holocaust situation. It's not that kind of concentration camp. Thank you for the help there. I appreciate that. I discovered this the other day. This was getting a read on Asian American voters. So this is a Facebook Live, and they show all these stats. You can't see it here, but it talks about the 6 top groups in terms of populations: Vietnamese, Chinese, Indian, Korean, Filipino, Japanese, how they feel on different issues, that they haven't been reached out. People like politicians haven't reached out to them. What I will do is I'll put a link to these in the Facebook group in case you all shall get curious. I'll take you to one of the Asian American news sites and to kind of see, to add to your feed, but also see what's going on. So Philadelphia's Chinatown angered by sudden arena proposal. Well, in Seattle, China, there's that proposal that Seattle Chinatown folks have been fighting because it runs through Chinatown. It takes out the businesses. Philadelphia, okay, there's an arena proposal that goes through Chinatown. New York, Chinatown, there's proposals for 3 more homeless shelters when there are already several. So looking at this type of racism, it's pretty blatant. But people are not paying attention. And plus, this doesn't make the main news. It's only in the Asian American news. There's that survey. Okay. So we'll talk about sex trafficking next week. Last week, we talked about Asians to follow. And I talked about Representative Grace Meng from Queens. She's Taiwanese, and that she is out there all the time, out in the community. And so here she is again and talking with other Asian folks. And I believe this is in San Francisco. Talking about what's going on there. Japanese American sprinter wins gold at World Championships. Chinatown mural in New York defaced by tigers. There's an article out there that talks about a Chinese shop, and that he's going to be charged because So at his store is graffitied all the time. And every time he has to go in and pay or do the work to get it fixed. And if he doesn't fix this next one within a certain time period, he's going to be fined. You can look by which group, Indian American, what's happening with Indian Americans. I find a lot of information here, and, we're not well represented, like, let's say in the Pakistani Americans. So I may go in here and look for something to see, is there anything new or different that we haven't heard about? This is great news here. 19 states teach Asian American studies, and more are to come. That is big news. There are 7 states who are currently mandating Asian American studies, and 15 more that it's in consideration. I'm hoping by sharing with you some of these resources hands-on, you can get a better feel for it, because with just our mainstream news, we're not going to hear about it. That's the main gist of what I wanted to share with you tonight, is some resources and to get ideas of what Asian Allstars are doing, to be able to motivate the folks in the group to also invite their friends or the people who are in the group that they know to invite to actually to get engaged. I will be inviting Asians who are not in the group, who are in the group and not in the group, to share Asians that they follow, to have that reoccurring segment.
One thing I was thinking, there's been, I believe it was it was like last week, maybe the week before, there was an Asian woman who was attacked in downtown Seattle.
Oh,
and
yeah.
a lot of times you get the names of people, and they're like quick news flashes. It's like Asian woman attacked. You don't know the name. You don't know what happened. Maybe you know the name, but that's it. I'm just wondering, sometimes I'm curious about who these people are. I mean, one thing that we could all do, because you can do this at your leisure, it's sitting in traffic and get on your phone or whatever. Find out more about who these people are. I mean, it's so often the news, and unfortunately it's due to time constraints. They give you these quick little flashes of, 20-second story, 30-second story. I think that it's always good, because I think it creates empathy to learn more about people, their stories, who they are. Because a lot of times, once I learn about a person's background, I have more empathy. I have more of an understanding of who they are, and maybe the racial group they belong to, and why certain things bother certain groups more than others, and things like that. So even just doing something like that, saying, okay, I'm going to spend a half an hour researching more in depth a story that's affected AAPI somewhere in the country. That could be one thing.
Yeah, thank you. And I think the Asian American news, they are doing a decent job with that, talking about, oh, this is a father and really like to do this and this and gardening. And so thank you for sharing that with us. So Gina is from Hawaii, and she is very supportive and has been very active in the last month or so that she's joined, and has invited a lot of people out here. So I just wanted to recognize this page, Black and Asian Perspectives. Kevin and I are making an effort to just share what we're doing and talking. I would say it's not corporate. It's just talking about life and talking about our weekends and how we see different things. I know that there's not much of an opportunity to see an Asian and Black person just talking. And so I think
Unfiltered.
putting these here, and it'll be better looking, but the last one is mayoral candidate said the homeless will live like Japanese, which is just a weird thing to say. And so that's there. And I try these videos are, I try and keep them to a subject, because we meander a bit. And so it may be a 3-minute video to 10-minute video. The one before that, we talked about Black babies as alligator bait.
Well, wait a second. You got to give some context to these.
No, really?
Black babies. Well, I wanted to, can I back you up for just a second?
Go ahead.
Because on Facebook, when you posted the thing about the homeless living like Japanese, there was a woman who, and it was great that she responded. She's a little confused about kind of the point we were trying to make. And I think one point in my explanation to her, I said, people will say things, they're trying to make a point, and they will bring in other things or other racial groups sometimes to make some kind of comparison. So it kind of reminded me of when, and I'm not getting political, but let's just say there were certain people that are against mask wearing, okay? And they were comparing mask wearing to the Holocaust.
Right.
So they're taking one thing where I don't like wearing them either. They're not the most comfortable thing, but it's not the same thing as a genocide trying to wipe out an entire race of people. But people will do that. So this guy says, well, if we have these tiny homes or whatever it was, it's going to be just like the Japanese, who were interned. Well, first of all, he wasn't there, so how would he know? And secondly, why would you want to make a comparison like that? I mean, it's because it just confuses people. And I think what it does is it diminishes what the internment was. Just like, to your earlier point, when you were saying, these terms that have been used, well, they were relocated, and well, they were incarcerated. I think there's a lot of people in the country who still want to diminish slavery. They want to diminish the internment. Some people want to diminish the Holocaust. And that I think it's going down a really, really slippery slope, so to speak. So, and that was one of the points I think that came out of that discussion. And a lot of times what we wind up talking about in these short little videos when we have these discussions is we talk about a current event, but we hopefully tie it to history and how history plays a part, even something happened 100 years ago and what's happening today. So I just wanted to add a little context to that.
Thank you for that. And I think this one is rather short. So, and I think it's important because he probably was trying to be inclusive and like, or I've been to Japan, try and, I think there was no malice there. I think it's just a matter of, hey, maybe have a more diverse folks around you so you can do a little bit better to be inclusive. So it's just like good effort didn't quite work out. So and discussion Black babies as alligator bait, Black bodies hung on trees. And so these are education and learning about, well, how did this Black man and his kids, I really wanted to understand. I was out of earshot and I want to be in his business, but I was very curious how he's handling this exhibit. So I think we talk about a lot of important things and usually current events. So we'll have, 30 of here in probably sometime. So anyways, I want to draw your attention to that because I think that I think it's a unique type of series. And in case you're wondering for action items, I did put the page of the terms of Asian American incarceration versus internment. So in case that's an action item for anybody, it's there. Would anybody like to share any action items they would like to do this week?
Yeah, I just coincidentally got the George Takei graphic novel out of the library and a few days ago. So that's one of my action items is to read it and then possibly share it with my kids. I have a 15-year-old and 11-year-old. They both like graphic novels. So
yeah, gosh, I would love to hear your perspective and their perspective of that too. That'd be real helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm actually going to try like what the idea I had was the blind books and picking out one that is like a banned book. I did a couple blind books are basically like we pick out a couple books and we wrap them. And then we put a barcode sticker that where we cut off the title and it would just have the ISBN and just the barcode, and then like we'll put like a tape a thing or like a little note like, this book is about this, and that, or in our own words and kind of get the customers to either try to figure it out or, it's kind of a popular thing right now. And so I want to definitely try that. One of our coworkers, Stacy and I coworkers, did this thing with an end cap that they set up in the manga area, and just picking out a couple of manga titles, and they put up shelf talkers, and if you like this, try this, and so that's kind of another idea that I hope to somehow incorporate in some other stuff. So
That's neat. And people go for that. They're like, oh, surprise.
all the time.
Really?
With the blind books, yes, all the time. Especially when you can use I don't like to say outrageous terms, but no, like when you can be like a little bit like less professional, and on those things, like where you write something about it that actually gets people being like, oh, hey, like as an example, one of the blind books that I wrapped up myself was Susan Hill's The Woman in Black, which is a horror ghost story, and perfect for Halloween and stuff like that. And and I just wrote down on the thing, like, a solicitor who gets sent to take care of the affairs of a client in a haunted house. What could possibly go wrong? And that got somebody excited. It was actually purchased. But just playing around with wording like that, and yeah.
And that makes me think of like wine pairings, like thinking of like two things. Like I listened to Tiffany Haddish. She's a Black actress, comedian, hilarious. And then Jimmy O Yang, who is Asian. I can't remember if he's Taiwanese or Chinese. And I read them in tandem, and it was really neat to hear all the parallels. Okay. All right.
So basically, Jolene, I'm going to continue on with transcription.
Thank you. Thank you. And what Pat's doing, so that will help get more SEO, and it will help people also who have visual impairment. So thank you very much. And I talk to Kevin all the time. So and we're working on a number of things.
That's right.
Yes. Well, thank you everybody for being here. And thank you, Gina from Hawaii.